What's up, guys? I wanted to share with you today the 4 most important tools you need if you're going to be raising money from investors. And some of these tools are harder to get and build than others. So I'll break them down one at a time and really kind of show you the sequence of here's how I think you go about learning to do these tools and building them out, paying for them. And then it's kind of different of how I actually give my presentation. So I'll give my presentation in kind of a different sequential order when I'm talking to investors. So let's talk about these tools. Here is the first one. The business plan is what I like starting out with. The business plan is an important tool to say, hey, you know what? Here is the perfect opportunity, right? It's going to be kind of general and saying, here is the opportunity nationally and even globally in the marketplace, right? There's all these baby boomers that are here. There is a big need and problem and potential opportunity. Also, it goes local. Here is the local opportunity for me. And this is the right timing. This is what you should be putting your money into, right? It should not be crypto. It should not be the stock market. Those are bad opportunities. Right now, this is the opportunity. So that is what this document is there to do, to sell them on. This is the opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean your deal is the right deal, but you're building towards that. I will definitely spend some money printed out on some card stock, get the high gloss, get the cover and all those things. It was like, I don't know, $50 or something to print. And you want it to look awesome. You want it to look impressive. And so I have a physical copy of it, and I also have a digital copy as I send it to people. And sometimes these meetings are just on Zoom. But your business plan, here's what it should look like. It should really talk about the niche. When we're talking about assisted living or memory care, it gets a little bit confusing to most people that are not like really in this industry. The difference between independent living or nursing homes or assisted living or memory care, they're just all blurred together and we don't know what it is, generally speaking. So I think you need to be very clear at identifying here's what it is. My business is going to be this, not this over here, right? So for us, we are very clear. We are not a nursing home. Big smelly facility, no. And we're not also dinky little RAL, right? Like we are building these mansions. We have, end-of-life care. We're really assisted living. We have also memory care services. We take care of people through the end of life. And your niche may be different, but you need to clarify exactly what that is. The next is the problem and the opportunity. It's pretty clear to most people there is a problem, right? Assisted livings, nursing homes, they suck. There is a big, therefore, opportunity. And that's a nationwide thing. Couple that with now you have the baby boomer generation that needs end-of-life care. And there's a ton of them. There is a housing shortage for seniors and end-of-life care, right? So you only have terrible options and you have a huge wave of surplus of customers that are coming, right? So that's a big opportunity. Now you can go further than that and say, okay, in my local market here is what the opportunity is, right? Here are my demographics. Here's the amount of people that are needing these kind of care, right? Here's the amount of people that I'm finding when I'm secret shopping. I'm looking at my local competition. Here is my local competition, right? I got big smelly facility A, B, and C over here, right? They're charging, $7, $8, $10,000 a month, whatever it is for here's what their niche is. My niche is going to be the same. We should reasonably be able to charge that much money, right? Here is what their wait list looks like. Here's how full they are. And there's some markets that are just like, man, it is just easy, right? There's too many seniors in these areas. And then some markets that are kind of more rural and maybe low income that don't really fit what you're looking for. And then I think you should talk about your staffing and your services, right? What are your services going to be and who's going to take care of these people? Because again, a lot of people think you're going to have nurses on staff, you're going to have doctors, there's going to be a lot of risk, there's going to be a huge overhead. And you can clarify, you know what? No, we are non-medical. We actually don't have nurses or doctors on our payroll. We only have caregivers and a chef and a manager on our payroll. And so therefore, our risk is much limited. All of the medical personnel, not on our payroll, not on our insurance, right? They are coming in and using our building as really the hub for their medical care, but we are just doing ADLs, activities of daily living, right? We're just taking care of grandma and grandpa at the end of life and being that facilitator for the medical people. So we have these 3 types of people on staff, non-medical, and here are the services that we provide. Whether you choose to do, entry-level assisted living where you're doing light levels of care, or whether it's more end-of-life care and or memory care, right? Are you going to have the, locks on the doors to prevent wandering and elopement as people get dementia and have all of those kind of memory loss issues, and differentiate yourself from here, my competition, right? My competition is charging this. We are going to be matching these services or superior to these services on these kind of things. I think it's also super important you talk about the type of payments that you'll be taking. Are you exclusively private pay, or are you taking kind of Medicaid, Medicare, those kind of things? For us, we are just a private pay model. So therefore it goes back to my due diligence of saying, hey, here's the opportunity and the areas that we're looking at. We're looking in areas that can afford $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month for end of life care for mom, right? And there's a certain kind of customer, and that customer is in a certain kind of location to be able to do that. So potential investors want to know upfront, how are people going to afford these things? Because it's not cheap, right? And it will play forward as you start talking about your Proforma. So that leads me to the second tool, right? That's your Proforma, which is your financial plan. Here are the numbers, usually in an Excel format, showing here's why this deal is a home run deal. And I want that to really come through, right? We just said, here is the problem in the marketplace, and the opportunity, the solution is building assisted living or memory care. Now I want to connect the dots that my specific deal, my assisted living and memory care mansion, is the solution, right? The best solution for this. And I want to show that via these numbers. So on the Proforma, there's really two businesses, right? You have the real estate business, and then you have the operations company business. So you want to break down how these things go and how they connect together. And so here's how you build out the real estate side. I think you want to start by saying, here is our total numbers here, right? Here is what it's going to cost if we're going to build new construction, if we're going to buy and renovate, if we're going to buy an existing facility, these total numbers. And then let's back into how we got there. So with that in mind, we want to say, okay, we have these banking partners, right? We've talked to these banks and we've sent them our preliminary numbers, and they said, hey, they will come in at 80%, 90%, whatever it is, right? Whether it's just on the real estate side or whether you're looking at potentially SBA, and they're going to come on both sides of the business, lending on the real estate and on the operations company side. So we're saying the bank's going to give this much, right? We'll say 85%, which means we need this much, right? We need 15%. And that kind of just is painting the picture of here's the gap that we have as far as investment capital. And we're looking for investors to fill this gap, right? Maybe it's 15% and I'm putting in this much capital, so we have this much remaining. So we want to start building out the deal. Here is the cost of the property, whether it's say vacant land or a building, right? We're buying it for this. Here is our renovations cost. And I would get as particular as you can, breaking down line items if you have those budgets. If not, you can just say, hey, here's price per square foot, or here's, some other number there. So then you want to identify all of the soft costs. And there's actually a lot of different soft costs, all of your holding costs, all of your architectural engineering kind of stuff, all of the interest payments, the reserve amounts, the builder overages, all those kind of things, right? If you can distinguish, here are my hard costs into the real estate, here are my soft costs here, and my safety factor, my oh crap money that's sitting over here, right? Now here is our total development cost, right? It might be 3 million, it might be 4 million. If you're building out a big old mansion, that's kind of what the numbers look like. So therefore, we have a commitment from the bank of 85% of this number. We have investor capital needs of this number over here, right? That is showing what the real estate side looks like. Then in Excel, I like to push over to the next tab and we'll show here's what our staffing looks like, right? And we're going to list out all of the different type of staff that we've already showed. We have our managers, we have our caregivers, we have our chef, right? Here it is with their hourly amount times the amount of hours per week. And we can get to a monthly number on that and say, okay, here's what it is with payroll taxes and all of that kind of stuff, right? Here is what our stabilized staffing expenses look like. And then we'll push that forward to the next one. And I want to show here is really kind of our profit and loss statement. Here is all of our income. And then really as year one is progressing, we are not stabilized yet. So I want to show it month by month by month, right? How many residents, including move-in fees, are we bringing in each month? How are we getting full? And then so you have your top line income going month by month by month through year one. And then you have our staffing, right? We've already pulled that forward from the last cell there showing, okay, here's our staffing. We may be stepping up on staffing. And then from there, here's our itemized expenses. And I think it is important that you spend some time and some resources to find out what are my real life itemized expenses for all of these things, right? My utilities, my food, my insurance, so many different things as you're getting into subscriptions and all those kind of things, right? List all of those things out. And again, itemize those month by month for year one. And then you can get a monthly profit and then push that forward and find, here's my year one profit. And then potentially now I'm stabilized. Here's my year two income, expenses, and profit, and push that forward. Here's my 5-year plan for this. And I like to create 3 Proformas, right? I'll do the same thing and I'll just duplicate it. And really, I want to know my best guess, right? My actuals. Here's what I think it is. Here's what market rates are right now for my bed rates. Here's what my staffing rates are. Here's my best guess on all my expenses, and push all that forward at the most reasonable, middle of the road kind of example that I can. And I'll say, okay, there's my actuals, right? This is what I'm moving forward with. And I'll present that to my investor. But then I'll also show, okay, here is my future, or maybe my best case. And you're probably not going to start at, your highest comp as far as bed rates, but you might get there next year, year 2 or so. And so you may say, okay, here's our future Proforma, right? As we have increased our reputation and we're building a wait list. So now we're increasing our bed rates by, $250 or $500, whatever that number looks like. And so I'll show a second version of the Proforma. Here is the future as we have become stabilized and are making round 2 of turning these beds. This is what this number looks like. It may be year, 2 or 3 or 4, but here's our future number that we're going to grow into. And here's how that profit sharing looks. I think that's an important one. What I think is more important is showing the third one, which is worst case scenario, right? Your investor really wants to know what's worst case scenario, and you should know that too. So if things go bad, right, we start talking about, low occupancy. We start talking about we can't sell the beds at whatever we thought. We thought we were going to be at 8,000, and now we're at 7,250, right? We thought we were going to have, 8% vacancy, but now we have 15% vacancy. Let's push all those numbers forward. But that's not really worst case scenario. That's like you're doing bad. What is really worst case scenario, right? And if you had to, drop bed rates to 6,500, how many beds full would you need to break even? If you kept your bed rates the same, but you had, 50% occupancy, how would you break even then, right? When did you make money? Stress test the deal. And I want to show the investor, okay, I have stress tested this thing. And I know that if something goes horribly wrong and I can't make sales, there's no income coming in, then I can do these to my expenses. I can cut, obviously food, right? I can cut some of the staffing potentially if I am half occupied. And if that's the case, here is my break-even number. I can get to 6 beds full, 8 beds full, whatever it is, and still break even, right? Like they should know, well, what happens when something horribly goes wrong, right? Because honestly, some people are just really terrible at marketing. There are plenty of big, smelly facilities in my area that are like half full, and they have a pretty nice building, right? Like it goes back to your culture and your company and your people. And if they're crap, then you can't make sales. So what does it look like so that you can show investor, here is really what I think is going to happen. We're going to grow into this number here. It's going to get even better in 2-3 years. But if things go horribly wrong, if COVID part 2 comes out, here is how we cover, really the safety net here of we only need X amount of beds full in order to keep making the payment and cover our staff and all that kind of stuff. So the third tool is your renderings or your photos if you have another building. So what I think is super important is that when you sit down with someone, you're able to show them, here's what we're building, right? Here is the 3-dimensional renderings of the exterior, of the interior, right? You can start showing this is a superior product, right? We're building mansions here. We're not talking about some dinky little 6-bed REL, right? None of that kind of crap. None of this big smelly facility stuff. We're building something special, something unique in the marketplace. And when you start showing, here is my local competition, right? We got this big 60-bed over here. And then you show, here's the renderings or here's the photos of these mansions that we're building. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm getting it, right? Like I'm seeing the vision. You're talking about something upscale and unique in the marketplace, and this is the perfect opportunity. But if you don't show them a photo, right, even a rendering of something, it's like, oh, well, you don't actually know what they're thinking. They might be thinking big smelly facility. They might be thinking a small box, right? So I think it's super important that you spend some money on getting some renderings or, photos if you have another building like we have, right? We just, hey, here's what we're building, right? We're just copying and pasting. Here's our mansions. And that couples with the fourth tool, really your plans, because you really can't go get your renderings built unless you have your plans, right? So specifically, I'm talking about architectural plans. And I would say this is probably the hardest of the 4 tools to do because it takes many months and a lot of capital actually, right? You're talking at least 20, sometimes $50,000, depending on what you're looking at, to have these plans built out. It might include structural engineering, MEP, those kind of stuff. But really, you just need to show the architectural plans, right? A 2D layout, here's my floor plan, and then a 3D version of here is how all the things are gonna go. And I actually like starting with this first when I'm meeting with potential investors. I don't wanna start with the business plan or the performers or numbers. I wanna get them excited. I'll actually start with the exterior renderings, right? Here is my mansions, here's what we're doing. We have virtual tours. I'll walk them through the mansion virtually, or we'll just meet there at the mansion, right? So we actually have a lot of our teams, their potential investors, come out to our mansions here in Georgetown, and I'll walk through it with them, same with them. And like, here's what we're building across the country, right? This team here, they are partnering with us. They're building this exact mansion. And so it's pretty actually cookie cutter and easy for them because they have all 4 of these tools from me, right? They're just copying and pasting. So here are the buildings. And I like starting with that with the investor presentation because I want to get them super excited. I want them to see and like understand, oh, this is it. This is cool, right? They start seeing the photos of the library and the garden room, and they start walking through and they see like the 20-foot high, glass walls, and like this, I want to live here. This is not a facility, right? This is BA. So I think it's super important that you build out these tools. You need the plans, you need the renderings, because you want to get people super excited. And this is honestly, it's a home run deal, right? You can line investors up pretty easily if you have an awesome deal and you build out these tools to be awesome. So I like starting in this order, right? From the renderings, going into these plan sets, showing here's the architectural plans, right? Here is my bedrooms, and I'll walk through, showing them the floor plan. Okay, here's what we got. Each of our bedrooms are 330 square feet. We have this big old room, right? Everyone's got their own private bath, roll-in shower. We don't have any long, smelly hallways, right? We have these, special rooms that we built in with glass walls everywhere. We have the kitchen here, private chef. Look at how massive our great room is. And we'll just start walking through these things, and we'll have, renderings and photos of the actual buildings. So I think that's the place to start, right? Get them all excited. They're ready to go. And then from there, then you start talking about the business plan, right? I think this is kind of the 3rd tool that you pull out. You start talking about the opportunity. You start talking about the baby boomers. You start talking about, in my marketplace, here's the secret shopping I did, right? I went and secret shopped these places. They're smelly. They're gross. The care is horrible. They're neglecting these grandmas, right? We are going to steal all of the grandmas from those places. I want to be very close to the big smelly facilities. Those are my future customers, right? We are going to steal them from those places, and we're going to build an awesome, massive wait list. And then from there, after I've shown them the buildings and said, here's the opportunity and the problem, this is how I'm solving it with this physical product and these type of services, and here's my staff, then I want to go into, well, here's the numbers, right? I've convinced you this is an awesome opportunity and this is this best solution. Now, how does it look on paper, right? And then from there, how does it look for you? How is your cut from this? And I think this is awesome because you really have the 2 parts of the business. You have the real estate, which means their loan is collateralized against the property, or they may be on the equity side. They are bringing in capital for this project, and we're going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to have an appraisal done, and actually we're building at substantially lower the cost than the future value, right? For me, we were at like 55% of our building cost, the hard cost, into the appraised value, right? My mansion's 6.1 million per mansion is what the appraisal came back at. And when we finish our whole project, the neighborhood, we're going to be about 2.5 million per building, average between the 4, and in hard costs, not counting all the soft costs and reserves and furniture and that kind of stuff. So you're building at a discount, right? Like that's why we're building new construction. We're not buying something at full price. We're building at a discount. So therefore, investors' capital is tied to the real property and it's safe, right? So you're providing, number 1, safety for their capital and their return on their investment. Number 2, you're providing amazing cash flow, right? You're going to go through the Proforma and you're going to say, here's what it looks like month by month. We are stabilized after such and such months. And then from there, we are making, $40,000, $50,000+ a month. And you're going to have X percentage of that, right? And it's very safe and it's very stable. And we're in this market here, and my competition has a wait list, or they're this percent full, right? I know with our marketing plan going and implementing the strategic 20 that we can go and build the right relationships to build a big wait list, and we're going to be at this price, right? We are matching comp for comp. What's the highest price in our market? Because we're going to have the most gorgeous mansion, and we're going to have end-of-life care and or memory care, whatever your service and niche is, comparable to these over here, right? So it makes sense as daughter or power of attorney is touring, and most of them are coming from the big smelly facilities, and it's been 2 years and they're sick of the care, right? Why would I not want to have all of the same things over here? Private room, private bathroom, chef, salon, all of the care, memory care, hospice, end of life, all that kind of stuff. I'm getting it over here at the big smelly facility. It's costing, say, $8,000 or $10,000 a month. I can come over here in a 16 bed, right? And have the same care, but the ratios are much better. The service is much better, right? The staffing turnover is not happening the way you have over here when you have the 60 or 80 beds, right? I can offer all of the same product and services, but do it better. So therefore, it's pretty reasonable. I can charge the same cost and build a big wait list. So this is really the kind of logic that I go through with my investor presentation as we are talking to, my potential investors and then all of our other teams' potential investors, and showing here is why you should invest with these teams. So those are my 4 tools. I want to stress how important it is. If you think that raising money is hard, it's because you don't have great tools. If you have great tools and a great deal, it is actually very, very easy to raise money. So if you're thinking that sounds like a lot of work putting all that stuff together, it actually was. But you can do one of 2 things, right? You can come partner with us, reach out to the team, see if it's a good fit, or we just started doing a training workshop where you can come spend 2 days with our team here in the Austin area, learn how to build mansions, learn all the financials. You will actually get our tools, our business plan and our Proforma, leave with them, be equipped. We'll actually break out into little small groups, and I will go and help you build out your Proforma for you. So this is something you can do. The cost is relatively inexpensive, right? The training event is actually cheaper than it cost me to build out the business plan. So come out, spend some time at the mansions, get equipped, get all of these tools, and then you can go and raise money for yourself.